Welcome, listeners of the Last of the Action Hero podcast, to this special, very special episode. We are being invaded by the Russians. We are talking 1984 classic Red Dawn. Tell me about the Reds, Ryan.
I'm glad you invited me on this episode, Sicco, because I haven't seen this film, Red Dawn, 1984's Red Dawn, in a long time. In fact, so long that I admit I came in with some preconceived notions. I assume your fandom was very strong, and is very strong, about this film before you even invited me.
I'm a big Milius fan. This encapsulates the best and the absolute worst of Milius. So just for that, I enjoy it. I think I enjoy it because the cast is just immense. They were relatively unknown when in this movie, but they would go on to become superstars. I mean, just run it down. Patrick Swayze, Charlie Sheen, Leah Thompson, Jennifer Grey, Steve Thomas Howell. This is just an all-star studded cast. So it's just, in many ways, a very enjoyable movie. Extremely well written and extremely well made.
The cast is incredible. I'd forgotten who was in it. I actually didn't realize it was Charlie Sheen's first feature film.
This was his debut.
I mean, this is 84, so this is now, how many years ago now?
Yeah, so it would have been filmed in 1983. So this is like, what, 40 years ago?
Wow. Can we believe we're getting to that age now with this film?
Yeah. Charlie Sheen was desperate to be in this movie.
How so?
Well, his father was in Apocalypse Now, and he basically grew up on the set. He basically decided, well, I'm going to be an actor on the set of Apocalypse Now. So he figured, well, what better way to prove to my father that I can actually act is to be in a big war movie with Milius, who was highly respected. Milius, if you don't know him from Conan the Barbarian fame, is the great screen. He wrote The Godfather. He wrote Dirty Harry. He wrote in Jaws, which is the scene in Indianapolis. He wrote that over the phone. Steven Spielberg called him up and said, look, we need to see the work. It's essential to the movie. And he just dictated it over the phone. This is a guy George Lucas would call up because they would call him up if he had problems or on Star Wars or anything. This guy wrote Apocalypse Now.
All right, I might have to move my computer. I don't know what's going on here.
I figured as much.
No, I got most. I don't know. Okay, so just bear with us there, folks. Well, it's just. All right,
I shall bear. Perhaps I should sing a song to entertain our listeners.
No. Just yeah. I'm going to be off the headset here as I move into the. Say again.
Can't find a comment. How often I'm on Discord.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, that was Louise. He said Charlie definitely got his high quality work early in his career. Wall Street was the pinnacle of Charlie the actor, but his comedic films proved to be his wheelhouse. There you go. That was Louise's comment there about Charlie Sheen.
Okay.
I think it's fair. Those are fair comments. Okay, I think... Do I sound better
Platoon. Here? You sound more consistent anyway.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're going on about this. Just repeat again the story about your John Milius love.
Okay.
Actually, I'll lead you in a better direction because you mentioned that because I caught this end. Mm-hmm. You mentioned this film both showcased what you love about John, what you don't love about John.
If you look at this movie and you see the cinematic quality, you notice that everything, and I mean almost everything, is shot outside with great lighting, with great production value. Even though this is a relatively low-budget movie, everything about this movie is top-notch. The sound design is great. The production design is great. All the shots are beautiful. It's shot in the Colorado mountains. Everybody just looks like they're freezing. It just looks fantastic. That has a lot to do with who John Milius is. He's an outdoorsman. He's a man's man. He would less than total realism. Puts this production at odds because basically he's one of those directors who just puts his actors through hell.
Okay.
He's one of those guys. He didn't direct the actors.
Okay.
He just, look, I need you to get these suckers in line for me, okay? So I'm just going to give you notes and you just make sure they do it. So that's how he was directing. He liked the look of insecurity and fear on the faces of all his actors. And that is as much a product of the way they were directed as the circumstances they were in. Because they all look like they're searching for, okay, so what am I supposed to do in this scene?
Is that a bad thing, though?
I'm not sure it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just John Milius. And it's a very 70-ish style movie making. He's not hands-on with his actors. He considers himself as kind of a general, a military general. He even wore a beret. He's like a character in himself, and he really got into character for this movie by thinking and acting like a general, wearing berets, ordering his underlings around like they were in the military. This is a guy who always has guns on him. There's this famous rumor about him that at some a movie exam notes for him or had some kind of issue with him, that he put his 45-9 gun on the table and said, really, you want to give me notes? Well, go ahead. He's one of those guys. He's kind of a cowboy.
Okay. Yeah, I also heard a rumor that he carried a loaded weapon with him on the set.
Yeah, he's one of the first guys. Well, it's a rumor. I mean, but he's one of the first who got canceled, to put it in modern terms.
First who get canceled?
Well, Inter wanted to work with him anymore because they considered him insane, ultra right-wing, dangerous. Despite the immense talent, it's undeniable how talented he is.
Okay, well, you say that, and I'm not pushing back, but I guess I'm treating this sort of like an interview. You know more about John than I do. I've looked at his credits, so why is it that he hasn't really... I feel like I know his name more than I feel like I've seen his films. It doesn't seem like he's the fixture in Hollywood that he maybe deserves to be.
Well, he was a great writer, fairly late. At the time, in the early 70s, he was considered the most talented of all of them. Okay, that's who we're talking about here.
Yeah, you were talking about how he was better than Spielberg. What made him, or what do you think made him better than Spielberg?
Because he was considered better, or at least the most talented. He was a good student in film school in terms of he was passionate about everything. And he's a big guy, so he stands out. He got noticed first. He was involved with his screen. They were all outsiders. Spielberg, Lucas, they were all outsiders. Nobody in film school had ever gotten into the movie business. So he was really one of the first guys to get in through a script he wrote, which was for a shitty movie. And ultimately he got like the Evel Knievel movie, and finally he would get the right, and he was really one of the first guys to do that as an outsider. They would buy his scripts.
I noticed on his IMDb, of course, or his Wikipedia page as well, that, yeah, he was a prolific writer. I just thought he was more of a director. I didn't realize, I guess he's no more for a writer.
He's much more a writer than he is a director. And as much as he is a director in the sense that, of course, he was schooled as a director, but he's an auteur director. So he writes his own stuff for the most part. This is not a guy you hire to film your project. This is a guy who makes up his own stuff and then puts it to film. Okay. Much like George Lucas.
And he's done some big films, uncredited.
It's not an accident that these two guys are close. I mean, John Milius, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg are extremely close friends.
Okay.
They went to school together, and they started out together, and they were helping each other, and they were encouraging each other, and they're a little club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Have you seen Uncommon Valor?
Yes.
I haven't.
It's good.
I think I really want to.
We should cover that for the network.
I think that's an easy one to cover, yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, well, Ted Kotcheff, of course, the director of First Blood, he directed this film.
Yes. Another great auteur director who was really underrated, who was the guy who made First Blood great.
Yeah, for sure. Directors are a huge part of any film's, well, they could be the film's downfall and success for sure. A strong director and somebody who has a vision that executes that vision definitely can save a lot of films. Okay, so that's John Milius. He's a name. He's a name within the industry. There could be a whole podcast episode, of course, on John Milius. And he's a name, again, that when I hear the name, I'm like, I've heard that name before, just being around action films throughout my life. It's a name that you hear and think of, but I just didn't know much about him. He's still alive. He's 78. He has a film that he's writing right now. I don't know if you saw that on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
Genghis Khan.
Yes. Okay. He's been trying to write that since, I think, 2012, but his stroke got in the way.
Oh.
He lost his speech.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
He had a stroke. He lost his speech. He lost most of his mobility. And his son played, they weren't able to get through to him. He was in this slumber state. And his son got through to him by playing the music of Conan the Barbarian. And that lit up his eyes. And that's how they've basically got him back.
That's adorable.
It is.
Conan the Barbarian.
He was an intricate part of making that soundtrack.
I know that. And I knew that. But I just think music is a very powerful I have heard that with people with Alzheimer's, of course, things like that. The music can draw people to a place. So that's good that it helped him. Absolutely.
Well, I suspect if Stallone ever has a stroke, he's in similar circumstances, and you play him the Rocky music, he will probably respond in the same way.
Yeah, he probably would respond better to the Rocky music
It's in his soul.
to Stop or My Mom Will Shoot soundtrack.
I don't even remember that one.
Oh, it was like a corny 80s. It doesn't matter. Okay, so back to Red Dawn.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I admit, when it was some preconceived notions, which we all do,
We all do.
My memory was, I won't say it was wrong, but I guess it was uninformed or forgetful. I've seen this movie before, but I dare say I might not have seen this movie since its VHS release when I was a kid.
Interesting. I saw this in the movies
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was 9
in
when it came out.
1984.
Yeah, so
And
only
it was
9.
illegal for me to do so. I sneaked in.
You snuck in.
I snuck in. Oh, yeah, that's better English.
Get your
I
English
snuck in.
together, you who speaks 5 languages.
Yes.
So I was 9 when it came out. So, of course, we saw it on VHS. So probably by the time it came on VHS and my parents rented it for us, I was probably 10 or 11, whatever it was. Like, I just saw the film yesterday for the first time in a long time. Before I saw the film, if you were to ask me, Ryan, tell me what you remember. Or tell me what you think you know. And so this is where I was wrong. And so when I first started watching the film, I kind of scoffed at it right away, thinking I knew what had happened in the film. I thought, before I watched the film again, my memory is that it was just this one town that got invaded, which shows you my lack of understanding when I saw this film as a kid, not recognizing the global stuff that was happening on. I would have missed it completely.
Because of the perspective. They show it from the perspective of the kids. They would know anything.
I remember thinking, okay, this is so stupid. This was me thinking before I even rewatched the film, thinking, oh, this is such a dumb film because why are these Russians, and I even forgot it was a mixture of Russians and Cubans, why are these Russians invading this one stupid hick town? What's the purpose of that? Why are they keeping hold of this town? But I totally forgot about the global things that were happening. Everything was happening before. This was like a military strike on America. And I didn't realize that.
And it's an alternate reality. I don't agree with the setup, and I agree with you that it's a little cheesy in terms of the Cold War really was about a ground war in Europe. The threat of the Cold War, if the threat was actually real, was the Soviets had a 5-1 advantage over NATO in terms of conventional weapons. They had more artillery, they had more tanks, 5-1. So the average life expectancy of a NATO soldier on the West German border was about 30 seconds. They were supposed to stop the Russians for as long as possible so we could strategically and tactically nuke Russian conventional advantage out of existence. America could bring up enough troops, because they had about close to 3 million troops, including the reserves at that time, to bring over to Europe. They could use their superior Air Force and superior Navy, and ultimately they would be able to stop the Soviet Union somewhere in the middle of France, maybe Spain. That was the strategy. This reality basically says, well, NATO will dissolve. The movie starts out like that. There's a famine in Russia. This creates a need for war, because whenever there's a lack of natural resource, whether that's food or whether that's fuel or whether that's water or anything else, you're going to get war. So Russia has to go to war for food because of there's a famine happening and your populace is going to be unhappy. And the only way to keep them happy is to just conquer land so you can feed your people. Much for the same reason Nazi Germany went to war with Russia. They couldn't feed their people, so they had to. World War III happens because NATO dissolves. America is perceived as weak. There are enough troops in Central America who are all communist. This is the 80s after all. Russia can invade through Canada, basically have a front war, conceivably defeat the technically superior United States.
A lot of this isn't really explained until the Air Force lieutenant, played by Powers Booth, is shot down. He kind of gives the kids a rundown of what's happened, which is kind of clever in its own right. I get it, because that's where it's like, oh, this is a worldwide issue. This is what's going on.
Yes, this is a complete surprise attack. Kids in high school, and from 1 minute to the next, a crack airborne unit lands in the schoolyard and mayhem ensues, and the kids escape to the mountains. These are kids brought up in that region, so they would be talking about Eagle Scouting. They were hunting with their dads, so they would know how to take care of themselves, at least for the short term. That's what their elders are counting on when they send those kids away, because they run to a gas station from one of the parents and say, what do we do? What do we do? The guy says, just go to the mountains, just don't come back. Until when? And he says, don't come back until you don't hear that anymore.
Then as the film continued, I let go of what you were talking about, this is an alternate universe, which then I start to appreciate. Apparently this film takes place in 89 for whatever reason. They picked 89. Mm-hmm. I then embraced that, okay, it's a commentary on things. So once I allowed it to be a commentary on things and a psychological study of what people may, or how people may act in a situation like this on soil, and it's a commentary on war, it's a commentary on who's right and who's wrong. There was a scene, of course, later in the film where like they're just like us. Like, what are we doing? Like, are they the good guys? Are we the bad guys? Like, it gets cloudy. It gets confusing. Soldiers to some degree are like, I don't even know what's going on. I don't even know why I'm doing this. I don't even know why I'm killing you. They're just people like us. They look at the people in the eyes as they kill them. They realize they're just humans like us. All this stuff is great in this film.
It's about a bunch of high school kids who are in unfamiliar territory, who are left to their own devices. They are just reacting. Right. They're just going through terrible situation.
Once I let go of, okay, the fact that America was so easily overtaken in Central America, I look at how big the world is, how big land is, how big America is. Every single person has a gun in America. Once I let go of the idea that these kids are doing the damage they're doing and they have endless ammo and they acquiesce all this military equipment, I don't even know how they did all that. I just treat it like a video game story to some degree. And I actually enjoyed the drama of this, but because the very beginning of this movie had such an impact when I saw it as a kid, that is the one part of the film that I've never forgotten over the 35 years since I've seen it.
The landing of the paratroopers?
Yes. It is such a
shock. Here you have the great Frank McRae.
Yeah.
Familiar to this network because we love him in every movie he's in.
Lock Up, Rocky 2, Paradise Alley.
You name it.
Yeah.
So, great character actor.
If you were just to show this film, like I said, Colt is somebody, you gave them no indication what was going on. Like zero to say, let's watch this movie from the 80s. Okay, cool.
It just looks like a high school movie. It starts out as a regular high school movie. Bickering over football scores.
Sure. It
has Patrick Swayze. Starts out as just a regular day in middle America. Right. Everybody's basically happy. They're working hard.
This opening sequence and the shock value that it has to the viewer is one of the strongest opening violent sequences that I've ever seen. The level of what the crap has just happened here. It's a backwards D-Day because it's the bad guys' D-Day on us. The shock and awe of this moment in the film, the teacher comes out like, hey guys, what's going on? Like, are you guys lost? Is there an exercise going on here?
The Russians think of themselves as heroes.
Sure.
Because they're saving us from capitalism.
Because there are plot holes galore. Again, how do these teenagers become Rambo? It is silly. The fact that they are able to hunt deer, okay, great. Now they're able to hunt Russian soldiers. The idea that they're so capable as fighters that the Russian soldiers are not is really odd. They're outnumbered 50-1. But these 5 kids cause so much damage that even Rambo would be like, okay, come on, that's a little bit unrealistic here, guys. But
it is filmed in a way, at least explains away some of the things you're saying. Not all of them are that capable. It's the 2 brothers who are capable.
No, and
because their father was one of those insane survivalists who trained them from a very young age to be adept with all kinds of guns, to be able to survive in any circumstance. And he says that to their sons. They visit their father when their father is in a concentration camp.
No, a re-education camp.
Re-education camp.
Inform me if re-education camps, is that a real thing? And where's an example of?
You are making thought errors. You think wrong. You do not think in terms of the greater good. You do not think in terms of putting society first. You are a ugly capitalist. You are a individualist. You think your freedoms are more important than the rights of your neighbors. So you must be re-educated. And that's what you see. They put on the screens and they're screaming, well, the revolutionary ideals of your forefathers are sold. America is a big whorehouse. Basically, they're being brainwashed into becoming good communist Russian citizens. Yeah, if you make thought mistakes like that, this is a totalitarian society, and it's all based around group. You have no individual rights. Your individual rights do not matter. It's all about the group. So you have to be subservient to the group. That's what totalitarian communism is.
Okay, one thing I wish the film did, because I like the idea that they were in these re-education camps. I kind of like that idea, and I like there was a makeshift camp formed at the.
The kind of camps they have in China right now.
They're in this drive-in is where they're holding it. It's a makeshift drive-in. The adults are kind of walking around aimless, and they've got the fire barrels going.
Yeah, it's just a concentration
Right.
camp to keep political prisoners.
But what I wish they did, I kind of wish they did this, and they didn't that I could see, is they had the speaker going on. There's like you heard it over the last speaker.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we heard what was being said. I couldn't catch any of it. It sounded like jargon. It might have been Russian. I'm not sure.
It's just propaganda.
This film would have been a great pitch for an HBO series. I think that what's going on in this film felt like this is not a good or bad thing. It's 1984. I know they just made this film, but it is what it is. But I'm watching it through 2023 eyes now. So I'm watching it through 2023 eyes. I'm actually excited by the ideas, and maybe this will happen because I think this film is a great pitch. Even if it's an 8-episode, 10-episode, you could make a series out of this. A lot of things that happen in this movie that are great cliffhangers for an episode. For example, the part where the father yells is kind of corny in the film, but if they fleshed out these characters, the problem with this film is nothing's fleshed out. There's a lot of great beats and there's a lot of great story ideas, but we have to get to everything very quickly. And it's not even a short film at the same time. It's a fairly long film for its time. So I'm like watching this, like, oh, that's cool. But then I feel like I don't know who anyone is. I got a little bit confused of who. I knew the four main ones: Charlie Sheen, Patrick Swayze, Jennifer Grey, and Leah Thompson, because I've known them throughout the films, throughout the years. But I met C. Thomas Howell. I got a little bit confused who he was as a young kid. These are interesting characters and dynamics. Robert was a great character because he went crazy.
He became a psychopath.
Yes, and that's something that can be fleshed out. Kind of got there maybe a little bit too quick in a 2-hour movie. I get that he got there, and that's fine.
I would snap like that if somebody hurt my pet.
Sure, of course.
Let alone my parents.
These are sequences that would make great episodic TV, which could be fleshed out.
There was no way in 1983 you could make an episodic TV of that. I mean, there was a TV show, a miniseries called America, which was with Chris Christopherson as the lead. He had a secret radio set up where he was basically reading the American Constitution in an America occupied by the American Communist Party. That's what basically the miniseries was about.
Oh, I've never heard of that. I'm just looking up right now. I never heard of that.
It's a really good show.
There's some sequences and some scenes I thought were really, well, we talked about the opening sequence. That is a sequence that is etched in my brain forever. It is so, I want to say traumatic's the right word, but for
traumatic.
For cinematic,
your home is just invaded and destroyed, and your parents are murdered in front of you.
And what makes it so great is because it was an 80s film.
They could just get away with that back then. Seth Milius didn't get away with it. He was punished for it for the rest of his career.
Why? How was he punished?
He portrayed communism as evil.
Well, it is.
It is. But Hollywood elites don't think of it that way. That's the reality of it. They hated him for it, and they blacklisted him for it.
Well, that's too bad.
It's crazy. This is the best and the worst of Milius. That's why I love him so much. He is the ultimate troll.
Fair enough.
No other director is this in your face. If you're going this way, he's going to go that way.
That's what I love about the film. It's unapologetic regarding countries that are being discussed, alliances being discussed, the frailties of our own military and the other militaries. So this film, like you're saying, I don't know if it's necessarily Milius' fault, but it's both a victim of its time, but it's also meaning like the quality of the writing and some of the beats. It is an 80s film. There's moments in the film, it's like, oh, it's so 80s. There's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I could go back in time and revamp some things. Flip side of it is that it's both a victim, but it's saved by its time. This could be written like this way today. It's unapologetic. It's not politically correct. You can't make films like this anymore, but you can make TV series like that. I know it sounds hypocritical, but I feel like this is something that can be fleshed out in a show. But there's just moments like, again, when Henry Dean Stanton was yelling, "Avenge me! Avenge me!" And I get it's supposed to be a powerful moment.
He knows he's going to die. He knows this is a man who trained his children because he was expecting this invasion. He was expecting this to happen, and he knew he was powerless to stop it. But at least he made his sons ready to face this. And that's why he's screaming at them, "Avenge me! Make my death matter! Don't cry for me." If you turn the noise off and just look at The actual actors emoting have one thing in mind. Patrick Swayze's father died a month before principal photography started. Patrick Swayze is breaking down in those scenes. It's real. You can just feel it in your gut how much pain he's going through. Patrick Swayze is not the type to turn on the waterworks, but he's supposed to play an older teen with a bunch of younger teens in the midst of all this trauma and all this war and all this misery. And they have no Coca-Cola and they have no toilet paper. They're crying a river. And that's what they do, but in such a way that it's believable. That's what you see in that scene. Sure, you can say, well, Harry Dean Stanton was maybe overacting a little. I'm not so sure. I think he's a very good character actor. The message he was basically relaying to his children was no matter what pain you're feeling right now, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we go on. This is your time to act. This is what I prepared you for. And this is what galvanizes these boys to do what they're doing. Until then, they were just surviving in the mountains. And the only reason they got in an altercation with those Russian soldiers that were coming up is because they were feared discovery. They killed them because it was either that or be caught. They had no plan for a guerrilla insurrection. It's just something that happened to them. It's just something they had to react to because their parents were put into camps. An enemy army was trampling through their playground. It's just something kids think of to do. It's like, we'll fight back, not thinking through what they're about to do. And that's what you see in the rest of the movie. You see them breaking down. You see this war take their toll on them. You see them all turn into old men in front of you in a matter of months. And this movie does that really, really well. There's a precedent for this. I mean, right now, there are over 300,000 child soldiers in the world. Children, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, with guns, fighting each other, being trained to kill each other, being sold off into slavery. Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Congo. Those are all places where children are just used as cannon fodder, maliciously. This is real. This is happening right now. This movie, despite the fact that it's made in 1983, 1984, it comes off as this kind of, well, Americans are all heroic and of course they're going to win the day. It's not really true. All those kids in the movie die. They get picked off one by one. This is a very realistic portrayal of what happens to children in a war situation. I love this movie for that, for the honest portrayal of Milius knowing what he was filming, knowing what war was really like, knowing what effect this would have on people.
So let's talk about some of the performances from the actors. We'll, of course, start with Patrick Swayze as Jed Eckert. What are your thoughts on his performance or Patrick Swayze overall?
Well, he's not dancing in this movie, is he?
No, this was his first film with Jennifer Grey. They would go on to co-star together.
Patrick Swayze serious as a heart attack.
Yeah. Apparently,
you can see the immense talent with Jennifer Grey. I mean, yes, they hated each other.
That's so
during
weird.
The filming of this.
Why? I wonder. Do you know what it was they didn't like about each other?
Basically, because Patrick Swayze was made to order them around. He was supposed to be the lieutenant. He was supposed to get them up in the morning, and he was supposed to tell them what to do, and he was supposed to get them in line, and because they were run like a military organization for months on end. And Jennifer Grey is just a pretty girl from New York, from an expensive acting school, classically trained, and she just got in this movie because she had a nice headshot, and they needed a pretty girl, and she just ended up in this crazy situation.
And she didn't bother me at all. I think she was unassuming in some ways, but not bad at all. Apparently, they did have a love story between her and Swayze that was sort of hinted at in the final cut, but it wasn't fully realized in the final cut. But you could see a couple little moments where they're kind of flirting and be nice to each other.
Sure. But towards the end, because they sort of warm to each other towards the end, whereas at the start, the two girls are added to the group basically because if they stay with their grandparents, they're just going to be found and sex trafficked. One of the girls, it's suggested, it's not actually explained, but it's suggested that they were brutally raped. The only way to keep them away from the Russians is to just hide them in the floorboards. And so at some point, they're going to be found. So he's just, I'll just hide them with the boys in the mountains.
And then we have C. Thomas Howell. Like, I don't know why I know the name, but I'm even looking at the face. He
was in a lot of stuff in the 80s.
He's been in lots of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, a good actor. My favorite movie of C. Thomas Howell is definitely The Hitcher. Also
Right.
because Rutger Hauer is in it, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's a classic. It's an awesome movie. It's one of the better horror movies of the 1980s.
For Katie,
He doesn't.
our only female host on the Last Action News podcast network, she's a big Ray Donovan fan. So, Katie, this is for you. Sorry, C. Thomas Howell played Dr. Brogan for 4 episodes on Ray Donovan, so she might know.
Sure.
There you go.
The only female host is about to change, though. I've recruited someone.
Oh, is it permanent or just for 1 episode?
It looks like, yeah. And I just had Virginie on for my Tequila Sunrise episode for the Mel Gibson podcast, and she
Oh,
was like, she said in her sexy French accent, "So, Sicco, can we do this every week now?"
oh
And I
wow,
was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to think of something."
oh wow. There you go. Yeah,
So
please. Yeah,
we're brainstorming. It's going to be awesome because she's a lead actress. She has a unique perspective on filmmaking. It's great. It's
great.
going to be,
Look,
yeah.
look
I
forward to
can't
that.
wait.
All
Yeah,
right.
we're brainstorming right now.
Good. I actually have a friend named, well, not, well, I shouldn't say a friend, but a coworker that I get along with named Robert Morris. Anyways, I just find it funny. That's the name of the character that C. Thomas Howell plays in this
Right.
film. But anyways,
is.
so, yeah. So, that being said, I really liked his character. Yes, I recognize his motives. But what I liked about this film, what I liked how it was brave was the character, who was it, Danny? Was it Danny that had
Yes.
the chip placed in his body?
No. That's Daryl.
Daryl. Sorry, Daryl. The other
Danny is the Hispanic kid, and Daryl is the son of the
The
mayor.
mayor, that's
And
right.
he's contentious because in high school he was kind of like the big kid on campus, and he's the high school student body president, whatever that means. So he thinks of himself as a leader because his father is obviously grooming him for politics. So at some point he sneaks off camera, he sneaks off, gets caught, is turned in by his own father, is tortured by the Russians, and they make him swallow a bug so they can track him, and they send him back to the group, and he doesn't say anything. And that's why they shoot him.
Yeah, this is a great part of the film. This is one of the brave things I like about the films. This is quite.
But they're not functioning as children and as a friend group anymore. They are now a paramilitary organization. They are a guerrilla group. They are dependent on each other for survival. If someone betrays the resistance, you die. You get killed. That's how it works. You don't betray your resistance cell. You just don't. I mean, this is war.
Yeah.
If you look at similar situations in World War II, this would happen.
But what I liked about it though is this is kind of a unique for '84 at the very least, like a unique idea that people that took over the town, of course, the Russians, the Cubans, they capture him and they shove this thing down him somewhere. So he's got this bug that they're able to track where the Wolverines. Of course, that I mean, anyone that knows the film knows what we're talking about. So the Wolverines are the group of kids named after their school mascot who fight back as like guerrilla warfare. Anyways, it was a brave or cool idea because we didn't know. I'm watching this movie for the first time again in 35 years, whatever it is, and I'm like, what are they tracking? Even I'm as a viewer, I'm like, how are they finding these kids? How do they know where to go? And
Russian technology.
yeah,
It's suspension of disbelief.
So the kids fight back when the Russians come. They do fight back. They win the battle.
They're good at ambushes.
Yeah, they capture one of the Russian soldiers. They question him. What I love is they beat him up. They want to kill him. I love all these things that we're seeing. Trying to see how we as humans, even though it's wrong that Russia, in the film, of course, that Russia.
Yeah, but the execution scene is extremely powerful.
Yeah. What I liked about the sequence was the build-up, is that they win their battle, they capture a Russian soldier, and during their kind of, like, they're beating them up, saying, tell us, blah, 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 whatever information they can extract. Within their own group, they got people that want to kill him, people that want to keep him as a prisoner of war. But then you have the Charlie Sheen character with the radio device trying to figure it out. It's like, okay, there's an arrow on here. It's pointing at something. It's pointing at something. He's using it. It's like it's pointing at Daryl. They go, why? He explains why they caught me and they put a bug on me. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We never saw that sequence happen.
No, it's the perspective of the group.
Yes,
and
so
if someone
we, as
does
a
something
viewer,
outside of their group,
right,
they don't know about it until it happens.
and that's a great idea because we as a viewer didn't know either. Because I was like, how do they? What's the point? And I was like, what? Why is it pointing at Daryl? Why is it pointing at him? So he explains. They caught me. And did you catch what he said though? He says they did things to me.
Yeah, they tortured him.
No, I think they did more than that. The way he said
it sounds like they abused him.
Yeah, sexually. I think there was sexual assault because the way he said.
Of course, he's a young boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just that, but He was betrayed by his own father.
Yeah, if he was just tortured, like I'm gonna say just tortured, but if he could have said like, they kicked the crap out of me or they beat me to a pulp. But the way he said, and they did things to me. The fact that he said it like that indicates he can't even talk about what he was violated in such a way that you feel bad for the kid.
He's a child. He's completely traumatized.
So they tie up the Russian soldier and him for betraying the group, and they have their own basically like their trial on top of this mountain, and they kill the Russian soldier, no problem. Even though he's like, you can't kill me.
Well, not really. They have trouble killing him as well. That's one of the things I liked about this scene. And also the earlier scene where the first time they come into contact with Russian soldiers is that suddenly these people become human.
Yes.
In the first scene with the Russians, it's like there's just three guys. They're just out in the mountains and they're kind of goofing around in the forest. And you have no clue that these kids are there. And suddenly they discover them and there's this immediate threat. So these Russians have to die. It's us or them. One of the soldiers is shot, but manages to get back to his vehicle and tries to radio for help. The Patrick Swayze character catches up with him and has his handgun, aims it at him, and he needs to kill him. And you see this Russian soldier just sort of staring down the barrel and just looking away. And it's just this moment where you realize these are just boys in the wrong place at the wrong time. The same with the children, the same with the soldiers.
This is what war is. War is just, where were you born? Where were you born? I'm born to this country. This is what the leaders of this country feel is what they're entitled to. They've gone to war for that entitlement. So either I'm on the side of the invader or the defender, and it's just where you're born. It's old luck, my friend. It's old luck and DNA.
And then you get the execution scene where they execute the Russian soldier. The Russian soldier actually says to Daryl, just say you're a friend so I won't have to die alone.
Yeah,
right. The Russian soldier knows he's going to get shot because that's what the propaganda has already warned him. It's like, if you get caught by the Wolverines, they're just going to kill you. So it's us or them. They get into this argument. It's like, no, we're not going to shoot him. Yes, we are going to shoot him. And it's like, why? And it's like, because we live here. And then he shoots the Russian soldier. And then there's the problem of Daryl. They can't do it.
No, it's one of their own.
Except for Robert.
Well, that's what I love. We kind of knew it was coming, but even still, the way he just shot Daryl, just goes up and shoots him.
He just brought up his gun and just blew him away.
Yeah, great
and
stuff.
I saw this interview with the actor.
Daryl Dalton is his name.
Exactly, and he defends this movie to this very day.
Oh.
And he says, you have no idea what it felt like after being shot and the scripts going off and being left behind, seeing the other actors just ride out of the scene, and I was just going to be left there for dead. Right? That's how it felt.
Well, I know the actors went through like a mini boot camp. They actually acted as insurgents or the enemy to some real like wartime exercises with the National Guard. They really bonded before filming. They kind of got that gritty, in the dirt type experience. That again, speaking of Saving Private Ryan, they also did that same thing for the actors in that film. So Red Dawn maybe was one of the first films to do that to the actors, put them through a boot camp.
They had their personal firearm with them in the hotel room. They could practice taking it apart and putting it back together.
Hey, I know how to do that.
Right? Patrick Swayze would knock on their door at night and say, okay, Wolverines, we're going out. And they would just play hide and seek in the town they were shooting in. They would play soldier at night.
That's funny.
That's the atmosphere. They were into it.
So Leah Thompson said this was the most fun she's ever had on a film.
I'm not surprised. You can see how tight they still are. Because this is one of those films that it's just hard. It bonds people. It creates friendships.
Now
I saw this interview with Charlie Sheen.
Oh, sorry.
And he's talking about how insane Milius was. And he's just shaking his head and saying, I love that guy so much.
That's good to hear. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So Leah Thompson played, of course, a teenager, but she was 22 in the film at the time. Her co-star, they had a little bit more scenes here with her flirting with the Powers Booth character. He was 30,
basically
he was 36 in the film, by the way. I just want to get that out. He was
right. She's in love with the Air Force pilot.
Yeah.
She basically arrests the Air Force pilot because there's a dogfight in the sky. The colonel's F-15 is shot down, so she sees him land, and she thinks he's a Russian at first. And so she tests him. It's like, okay, so what's the capital of Texas? You know, and she says, and of course he's not from Texas, so he says the wrong city, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Look, darling, I'm cold. Okay, you've seen too many movies. Yeah. And she goes, well, you hungry? And it's like, this is her first real connection she has with someone outside the group. And of course, he's older and he's sophisticated and he's a leadership figure. So she's gonna
They did have a love scene.
Yes, well, he does explain that he has a wife.
The way they kind of insinuate is they may or may not have been killed in the attacks.
He doesn't know.
He's not too sure. He hasn't had any contact with her, but hey, he's only human, right?
Yeah, you're not really sure. He
Force
doesn't
back,
seem
but-
like the kind of guy who would deflower a 15-year-old girl.
Well, no, but apparently they did film a love scene.
Okay, yeah.
But it was nixed due to the age difference.
Smart. And also because it's just a crush, it comes off more effective
Yeah,
when
it's
he
better
has to
this
sacrifice
way.
himself.
Yeah, it's a little bit better this way, where it's like he's endeared by her.
He's a father figure.
Yeah, he's endeared by her being sweet on him, but nothing's ever done with it. Or
Yeah, and she puts this little flower in his overall. She sneaked into his tent, and he's like, okay. And then she shows him the flower. It's cute, and it's innocent, which makes sense that something like that would happen under those circumstances.
And I love me some Powers Booth. You and I had the opportunity, if anyone's listening to this, check out our episode of Southern
Great
Comfort
actor.
that you and I did with Powers Booth in that, and he was in this one. So this is twice now that you and I have had an opportunity to watch a film and talk about a film that has Powers Booth in it. And now I believe he was he not in Uncommon Valor? Or no, he wasn't. That's right. He's not in that one. Okay.
No.
He's in Extreme
It
Prejudice.
would have been.
I
It
think
would have made the movie better.
I think we talked about doing Extreme Prejudice one day. Because that was
We should.
Yeah.
But Powers Booth makes every project better he's ever in.
Yeah. And I, of course, love him. Tombstone. I mean, he's just so great.
He's so great in that.
Curly Bill Brocious in Tombstone, yeah. Okay. Rest in peace to Powers. Sorry, let's do who's dead in this film. Oh, man, there's a few. Powers Booth has passed.
Basically, Powers Booth's character is a turning point because they go from a haphazard,
He organizes
lucky
them. Right.
bunch of kids to an organized military force.
That's right.
He
amps it up
teaches
for them.
guerrilla warfare, and he teaches them sound tactical and strategic warfare. And one of my favorite scenes is where he explains this plan to basically free everybody from the re-education center. And so he says, that's pretty simple. Questions. And they go, what's a flank? What's grazing fire? He's thinking in his military minds like, okay, I just explained something, a 4-year-old could understand, and these kids just have no clue. And he says, give me a drink. I love that scene.
Yeah,
it's great. It just
he was
basically
great in
shows that he's trying, but even he sees, well, this is not going to last. And he keeps warning Jed, the Patrick Swayze character, look, you don't have to keep doing this. You can come with me. We can cross the lines. You can be free. At this point, Jed can't stop. He's addicted to war now. It's like, no, I can't stop. This is where I live. And he thinks he's making a difference, when in reality, he really isn't. And maybe in a propaganda sense, maybe that it gives people hope. But in terms of actual tactical advantage, no, it's not hurting the Russians, not really. Basically, that group is just an insect that they want to stamp because they're an annoyance.
Did you see the remake? The 2012 remake?
And I don't want to because I know how bad it is. If Milia says, don't watch this, then I'm not going to watch it because I already know how bad it is going to be. I don't have to watch Avatar 2 to know it sucks. I don't have to watch, what's that last Bond movie where they kill him?
Oh, spoiler alert. Come on. You can't.
There's no spoiler alert. Everybody knows.
Come on.
I don't have to watch the last
movie's called No Time
Disney
to Die.
Star Wars movie to know it's awful.
All right.
I don't watch that.
Calm down, Siegel, calm down.
No, I nerd rage when you bring that shit up.
All right, well, that's probably why I do it. Red Dawn, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I might have seen it I can't remember. You know what? I don't even remember now. What does that tell you? That I don't even remember if I've seen it or not.
Well, Hemsworth has been in better movies.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
he's a fine
12 Strong is an excellent movie.
Yeah, he didn't make the movie bad. It's not him.
No.
We talk about directing and writing, right?
Instead of invading with the Russians, they invade with North Korea. Really?
Yeah.
North Korea. They can't even feed themselves. Please. If you had said China, it would have been realistic. But because they were marketing that movie to China for money, they wanted Chinese people to go to the movies to go see this piece of shit.
They should have kept the original Red Dawn. China was one of the allies with the U.S.
Around the campfire, the colonel explains, well, who's on our side? Well, it's the Chinese.
In the UK.
400 million screaming Chinamen.
No, 600.
Last I heard, there were 1 billion. He says, yeah, there were.
The other way around. They were 600 surviving, but 400 million were killed by nuclear warfare, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, something like that.
You can't say China, man. You can't say that, Sicco. You're not allowed to say that.
What, did I say China?
You said... Roll back. You said, I got to edit this out. You said Chinaman.
Did I?
Yeah.
I don't think so. 400 million screaming Chinamen. 400 million screaming Chinamen. I'm not supposed to say that? Really? And what am I supposed to say? Chinese citizens?
Yes.
Good little communists?
Well, sure. I mean, why do you have to say little? Okay, so Red Dawn, the original, of course, the only one that we'll talk about. Red Dawn came out in 84 at a budget of $17 million, which is a pretty hefty budget for back then. Box office of $38 million, but throughout the last, obviously, almost 40 years, it's become a cult classic amongst movie fans, action fans, Patrick Swayze
critics still
fans.
hate it. The critics still hate it.
Oh, because, well, they're more woke now than ever, so of course they're going to hate it.
Of course they're going to hate it.
Your average guys like me and you, gals like me and you, people like me and you, watch this film. And like I said, I went into this film with a preconceived notion, maybe like the critics, I'm too good for this. This movie has plot holes. This movie has, like, again, endless ammo. Where did they get a lot of unexplained acquisition of ammunition and their ability to kill the way they did? Fine. But what I enjoyed about it was the brave takes, some dramatic beats that I had forgotten, some traumatic or stuff that happens in this film that's very dark. This movie's PG-13, but it should be rated R. And I don't mean it really, like, it was rated PG-13, but this is a dark film, folks. So it's both a victim of its time, because there's moments where it feels 80s, where it could have been shot better in a better fashion, but that's just a lack of budget and time, probably. However, because it was in the 80s, there's some very visceral, that's the word, some very visceral, bloody, dramatic, dark, grainy, just some really cool
Yes, and
moments.
you have to remember that in the 80s, this was our nightmare.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Cold War.
The Russians are coming. This is what we were promised. This is what was hanging over our heads. We're living under the threat of the mushroom cloud. It's like nuclear war is on the horizon. The Russians could attack at any second. We have to be ready. That's what this movie is. Taps into that fear. And that's why it's so effective to show Russian troops tearing up a town. Because that's what's in the back of your head. So, is this going to happen to us now? Are the sirens going to go off? Is this it? We were all waiting for this. And that's what makes this movie so powerful. And in many ways, it's a horror movie.
If you haven't seen this film, we really haven't spoiled too much. I
want people to enjoy the movie I talk about for the reasons I talk about it. I want to add to the listener's viewing experience, to enrich them with my experience and my love for this movie, because it is really good cinema. It is an excellent, excellent film.
I just want to say thank you, Sicco, for inviting me on this episode. I don't think I would have rewatched this film anytime soon had you not invited me on to do this episode of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast to review a film that isn't basically a part of this sub-channel of the feed. Is sort of the flagship in some ways, because we're doing films that are not part of the big guns, the Mount Rushmore of action stars. So what I like about that is we get to investigate these films of old or new, but particularly the older ones, which I've enjoyed doing, like from Chuck Norris to Burt Reynolds and Powers Booth. And it's just fun to watch these films of yesteryears. And boy, there's something aesthetically pleasing about these films that we're just not getting it anymore. And as beautiful as Avatar might be to look at, let's just say, I'm just saying aesthetically, there's something that I like about these gritty old films where they're just, nothing CGI, all real explosions. People just said what was on their mind, and things were just done. And if you didn't like it, you just turn it off. I just miss those days of movies. And these are the glory days of movies, man. These are the glory days.
There's one thing about this film that we haven't covered that I think is important to mention. That is that a lot of time is spent on this movie to flesh out the bad guys. The Russians and the Cubans are not just cardboard enemies. Those are people.
Good point.
And their motivations are explained, both through their actions and through their thoughts. Whereas you have the Cuban military commander who writes home to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
He just can't go on anymore. He's had enough of it. He's emotional. He doesn't have like that Slavic harshness that the Bill Smith character has. That's the Spetsnaz commander who is brought in to take care of this Wolverine problem. And they're opposites in many ways. Both these characters, in fact, all of these Russian commanders and Cuban commanders are portrayed in a very human way. They're there to do a job. They believe in what they're doing. And they're human beings more than they are soldiers. And that's something that empowers this movie.
We got a lot of foreign language for us English speakers. So this is an American film, filmed in America, about Americans. So we got a lot of subtitles. There's a lot of reading,
Yeah,
which I thought was
there's
great.
Spanish and Russian in it, and
I thought
I learned a lot of Spanish from this movie.
that's what I really liked about this film. Again, is we see, just like you said, a lot of film time, a lot of screen time of quote unquote the enemies, of the invaders, of their motives, of their discussion about the Wolverines. Yeah, fantastic point. That's a great part of the film, and they're well acted, fleshed out, almost ironically more fleshed out than the kids sometimes.
Yes, and they have these moral discussions about.
Yeah, just like, the one guy's like, I was an insurgent. He was like, I get why they're fighting. I get why they're acting the way they are. I've been on that side. So, they're still the enemy, but he's saying, I understand the enemy because I've been there.
And he's disgusted with the position he's in.
Yeah.
Because he's no longer a freedom fighter. He's now part of a repressing force. He says at some point with like this disdainful sneer, it's like, then what are you? The same as you. I'm a militia man. I'm just the man. I'm just the bully. He's disgusted with himself. And you see this moral decay happening where they don't really know how to handle this guerrilla group. They don't know how to handle this. So they think, well, we'll just have reprisals. We'll just, for every Russian they kill, we'll just shoot a bunch of civilians. For example, that's what the Nazis did in World War II. They did this exact thing. They did it in my country. We have like monuments all over the place with stuff like this, with plaques of people who were executed on street corners because some important SS or SA leader would be shot. Right? Some who would be liquidated by the resistance. And then they would just round up people randomly on the street and shoot them. Yeah. And they would leave the bodies there as a warning. And done brilliantly by a man who is vilified for being insane and right-wing and promoting war. When you really look at this movie, it's utterly ridiculous that you accuse Milius of something like this.
Right.
This movie is brilliant in its own way. It's also a cartoon.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of a victim of its time, but also because it was made when it was made, it is what it is. So
this is the best and the worst of Milius.
I love how it is referred to as World War III. They don't shy away from that either. This is World War III. I love it.
Yeah.
So, again, watch this film, folks, if you haven't seen it already, or rewatch it with adult eyes. The last time I saw it was a kid, and I don't know why I never came back to it. This is one of those films where you always hear about it, you see things about it, you see memes about it, or whatever. You think, oh, yeah, right down. But now, yeah, I haven't seen it in 35 plus years. I'm glad I revisited it because my feelings on it have completely changed to my preconceived notions. So if you haven't watched it in a while, rewatch it, and you might be surprised about just how gritty, dark, brutal it really is, despite some of its own, 80s this or that here and there. But it's more gritty and dark than I quite remember. It's almost a 70s film in many ways.
Yep, absolutely. I hope our listeners have enjoyed this. I always enjoy making these special episodes. I mean, I did 3 of them over the holidays.
Yeah, it was great.
So I'm very happy about that. And we had a great episode with on To Live and Die in LA. Yeah. If you haven't listened to that, please check it out because that's another movie I'm very passionate about. Me and Craig both love this movie very much for obvious reasons.
I got to rewatch it. It's another one that I've seen once. I got to go back and watch it again. Yeah.
I hadn't seen it in quite a while. And when I rewatched it, looking at it through more modern and I should have put this more seasoned eyes, I appreciated it all the more. Absolutely. Same with Highlander, rewatching that. Highlander was a childhood favorite. I loved Highlander. And rewatching it, seeing what that director did, it was a joy to watch.
Yeah, a lot
I
of great
episodes. I had a great time doing it with an actual Scotsman.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good pick. That was Scott.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good pick. I'm not as a fan of that movie as you are, but I learned things I didn't know before, which I found very interesting. I didn't realize that Mike Lambert was such
Christopher Lambert.
Christopher Lambert. That he was as French as he was, or I didn't realize he didn't speak English at all. I didn't realize it was that bad. So that's very interesting. So I might have to rewatch that just to see how he did. So
he barely spoke English and he didn't wear glasses, so he was practically blind.
That's funny.
It's amazing.
I didn't know that. So that was actually quite funny. So those are the things you get on our show, guys. Thanks a lot for listening. And we do appreciate it.
And listen to my upcoming season of Mel Gibson. It's coming up. Hugging the Cactus, season 2.
I can't wait. Yeah, I guest starred on that with the Maverick episode. We won't spoil anything, but that was a fun discussion as well.
Yes, it's going to be a fantastic season.